beginning, comedy has been an exceedingly large part of cinema. Even more impressive given that cinema started out in silence, with some of the biggest actors like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton specialising in comedy. And thanks to the movies being silent, they did what every good creative does when faced with a limitation. They got creative. Buster Keaton especially continually upped his own physical comedy with more and more elaborate and clever scenes. So, how did we get from this to this?
But if you are saying that any of you could have traits in common with Sarah's...
It all comes down to the difference between smart comedy and dumb comedy. But isn't comedy subjective? And isn't comedy kind of dependent on dumb things happening? After all, if only smart or sensible things happened, that would just be boring. Well, it's not quite that simple. To get some things straight, a smart comedy doesn't prevent it from having dumb comedy moments.
Please keep us in mind for your next special occasion. We plan many new and exciting innovations in the weeks to come. Starting with our drive-through window.
Nor does a dumb comedy prevent it from having smart comedy moments.
Hey, who's he? I don't know.
Nor does smart comedy simply mean comedy that works. Nor dumb comedy mean comedy that doesn't work. A movie that manages to do both smart comedy and dumb comedy extremely well is Hot Fuzz from 2007. So what is the difference between a scene like this
truly exceptional. And he had one thing you haven't got.
What's that, sir?
A great big bushy beard! Come on!
and a scene like this?
I'm a slasher, and I must be stopped.
You're a what?
A slasher of prices. Just kidding.
Well, it all comes down to only a few things. The first being that the second scene informs you about the characters. Sergeant Angel doesn't just ignore Skinner or instantly arrest him. Instead, he acts somewhat confused and waits for more information. Meanwhile, if this was a dumb comedy movie, Angel probably would have instantly arrested Skinner, which would only tell you that Angel is an idiot and contradicted his earlier characterization in the movie. So instead of it being funny, it's just, well, dumb. Meanwhile, this scene builds some suspense, reinforces Angel's character, and then gets a laugh with some wordplay. It also keeps up the pace of the movie and moves the plot forward, providing Angel with reason to be suspicious of Skinner later in the movie, making it not just a joke, but also a plot point. The earlier scene of a great big bushy beard, on the other hand, while there are plot-relevant things being discussed in the scene, the actual joke of the difference between the two sergeants being a great big bushy beard is irrelevant. If this line was cut, the scene would continue on without a problem, unlike the previous scene, which functioned as both a joke and plot point.
Your predecessor assumed that rural policing was easy. Ended up having a nervous breakdown. And Sergeant Popwell was an exceptional officer, truly exceptional. Come on, let's have a mosey around.
So, all the bushy beard is just, this random thing happened. It still gets a laugh from having very good comedic timing, and also a slight suspense build-up seconds before. But it is inherently a negligible line that isn't any wordplay and is simply I wasn't expecting that to the audience. Both of those scenes were dumb and smart comedy executed very well, but when they're executed badly, it looks very different. When dumb comedy is executed badly, all it leads to is just a lot of dumb stuff happening, and it almost always lacks one key character. that being the straight man, or often in comedies, the last sane man.
Police Constable Nicholas Angel.
This is essentially nothing more than a character that realizes the absurdity of the world around them and acts like a normal person would. This is essential down to a neurological level. Humans evolved a sense of comedy possibly to maintain a grasp of reality, what's real and what isn't real. So when no one in the movie looks around and goes, "This is weird," it's just normal, and therefore not funny. Often in a good comedy movie, the comedy doesn't come from the absurdity itself, but instead from the last sane man essentially having a mental breakdown from all the absurdity. Without the human perspective, it's just a lot of stuff happening. The opposite to this concept is the idiot hero, a character that if they were real would be completely useless, but in the movie everything just works out for them no matter how absurd. This is essentially the reverse of the last sane man, as instead of the world being absurd and them being realistic, now the world is realistic and they are the absurd element surrounded by usually the rest of the cast being straight men. Once again, the comedy comes from the straight men having no idea just how the idiot hero managed to pull off their antics. And yet they did. Both dumb and smart comedy utilizes these character tropes. While dumb comedy relies on them more, smart comedy also requires a straight man, though not necessarily an idiot hero. When smart comedy is done badly, it looks fairly different than dumb comedy done bad. An obvious thing that could go wrong would be it being too smart and the jokes flying over the audience's head. However, this has less to do with the actual intelligence of the audience, and more to do with how well the joke is framed. A more common way smart comedy is done badly is to understate the punchline.
Of prices!
This is easy to do because if it gets too heavy-handed, it can transition very quickly into dumb comedy. Understanding the difference between smart and dumb comedy is important for writers, as without understanding the difference, it can be exceedingly easy to execute a smart joke as a dumb joke, or vice versa. While a lot of people would rather dismiss the idea of this kind of comedic analysis, simply saying that all comedy is subjective all the time and that this sort of thing ruins comedy. In reality, it's the opposite. By understanding just what makes something funny, it becomes funnier. And by dismissing comedic analysis, it only makes it harder for upcoming comedy writers of all kinds to find out how to write comedy better. After all, if you want to write an autobiography well, you should study other autobiographies and analyze them to find out what works and what doesn't, and what formats use the same tropes or different tropes. So why should comedy be any different? So to recap and keep it simple, smart comedy moves the plot along, informs you about the characters, and makes sense in the world of the movie. Meanwhile, dumb comedy is things that just aren't expected, go against expected reality, and are often just a lot of things happening with no human perspective. So, until next time, stay tuned.